Oh, hello.
Hey.
Well, now my dog's trying to bark. Hold on a second. Close the door. All right. Now she can go bark at somebody. How's everybody today?
Good. How are you doing?
Hi, Max.
Hey.
Good, thanks. How'd things go with your new listing?
There's a lot of children involved in it. It's going to take a little while, I think.
Uh-oh, a lot of heirs.
There's 10 children.
Oh, boy.
So I'm just going to step back because they want to talk to their man. They want to talk to their man. And I'm just going to continue to call them and just check in on them and see how things go.
Wow. That makes it a little complicated, yeah. Now, is this a situation where the owner has passed and now you have heirs, or?
I thought the owner passed, but it must have been the father died and the mother's still alive, but the kids have control of it now.
I see. Okay.
And I know the woman that's selling it. I just realized that I actually know the old lady. I knew her since I was a little boy. And so I've got my mom to send a connection into her just to communicate, check in. And I'm just going to go from there. Because the kids, I don't really, it's no need to get in between all those kids. I'd rather just talk to her. And
yeah, that could get complicated for sure.
Yeah. It's always, the first one's always going to be tough.
Can be, yeah. Did you have any problem understanding some of the corrections that I suggested?
No, the only thing I was interested in was on the commission.
Yeah.
I'm going to compensate the other brokerage. I thought it was okay to pay them a 2% on a piece that's the property that's kind of messed up. That's going to take some more time. That if you want to.
Well, our philosophy here at Keller Williams anyway is to typically pay the buyer's agent the 3%.
Okay.
because they're the one that's bringing you the buyer.
Okay.
So
It's just I feel that some of them are more challenging than others. So
true.
if this is like an investment property, so it's going to take a little bit more helping
A
them.
little bit more, yeah, complication. I understand. Now, I also know in the Triangle area, it's not unusual for buyer's agents to only get 2.4%.
That's what I've heard.
So, and it's something that you can think about, but it's been our practice here at Keller Williams to always pay the buyer's agent 3%.
Okay.
So that's why I brought it up.
I got just no problem. It's just trying to figure it out. I mean, I figured I'd throw that out there and see how that worked. I know there's a lot of people who don't like that, so I was just
Right.
giving it a shot and seeing how it worked.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. I'm just writing down today is May the 4th. So how's everybody else doing? Anything happening that we need to know about out there in the marketplace from any of you all? Marcy and Chris and I'm sorry, tell me your first name again. Miss Hall?
Oh, Sanji.
Sanji.
I'm
I
Sanji.
wanted to say
Okay.
something else, but I knew it wasn't right. So sorry about that.
That's all right. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing with me much, Carl. I got somebody pre-qualified from one of the up on the Tim and for 125, and then she didn't like Tim and went
Uh-oh.
through the state employees, Duke state employees, and pre-qualified for over there for 75,000. So I think it kind of hurt her feelings. So
Oh dear. That's a pretty big difference.
yeah, I told her that she didn't give her W-2s to the Duke, and she gave it to Tim. So I think Tim
Oh.
probably ran the numbers a lot tighter.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her, maybe she need to get those W-2s back to Duke over there and see.
Absolutely. Yeah, they should both have the same information.
Yep.
To give her a true picture. Yeah, for sure. Marcy?
I got the last 2 under contract.
Yay, good for you. Congratulations.
So I'll have 3 closing this month.
Wonderful.
Wow.
All closing in May.
Yes.
That's great.
Yep, the
Excellent.
12th, the 27th, 28th.
Well, you can't complain about that.
Yep.
That's excellent. Good for you.
And I'm learning
Chris?
how to add to our vendor list, how I've noticed the different people, how they communicate back and forth. And I found a really, really great lender who really moves on the ball.
Oh, yeah, we should know about that.
Yeah.
Is amazing. I mean, we signed a
Want to
contract on,
type his information in the chat box
sure.
for everybody?
Um,
That would be excellent.
We signed our contract on Saturday and I sent it over to her and she had him in the underwriting process Monday.
Wow.
Wow.
So she is, and then she called and asked if we could close earlier. And I'm like, I called the attorney and they said yes. So, I mean, when does that happen?
Yeah, all the stars were aligned for you, it sounds like.
It was great. So I had a long talk with her and we're kind of linking up and I really I wanted to tell her how great it was to work with someone who was moving so quickly on top of the ball. And we just started talking and I'm trying to be more bold.
Yeah, well, every time you do one, you get a little more confidence.
That's true.
Yeah.
I missed who she was talking about.
She was talking about a lender that she found that was able to work really fast. And so she's going to type the information in the chat box for us.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, Chris, how about you? You're up next. What's happening in your world?
Well, I got 1 under contract and picked up 2 buyers.
Wonderful. Good for you. Mary?
I have 1 under contract. I've tried for 2 and didn't make it, multiple offers, and Gotta sneeze.
Bless you.
What else? I've got a closing tomorrow and a closing next week.
Excellent.
Wow.
That's great. Good to hear. So you all know about the free lunch tomorrow, the pizza lunch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody signed up for it? Okay.
So what do we do? Just pick it up and then go home, or do we
Yes.
watch the meeting there?
No. It's a virtual meeting, actual lunch.
Who can beat that?
Exactly. So yeah, it's I believe it's
Pizza Hut.
Matt from Geico that's sponsoring it. And so you just drive in. Now I'll be in Mebane. So some of you who signed up for the Mebane office, I think it was you, Max,
Yes.
and a few others. I'll meet you in Mebane at 11:30. And then there'll be some in Hillsborough. Heather will be there with Mary. And then the rest of the staff will be in Burlington, handing them out. So we'll have our masks and gloves. So we'll be protecting ourselves from you.
Carla, when we did the RSVP thing yesterday, do you get something back saying that it actually went through, or we're just assuming that it went through?
I am assuming it went through.
Unless you select send a receipt.
Yeah.
Had a check box on the.
Yeah, that's right. It had a checkbox if you wanted a receipt.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Let me check real quick. Just bear with me a second. I remember seeing a roster. Let me see if I can find it in my email again. Then I can tell you. So other than Max, who's already used the new form, is anybody else?
I just finished filling one out, but it was a pain because you had to put in every field.
Yes,
Right?
I know. And we're working on trying to get DocuSign updated.
It's a listing agreement, right?
Yeah, it's just the listing agreement that was changed. All right, let's see here. Look at the spreadsheet. So I wanted to talk about the new listing agreement today, just so everybody's clear on it. All right, let's see if Marcy's on here. Of course, it's not in alphabetical order.
I have a question while you're hunting.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you do if you are showing a house and the people,
Yeah, Marcy, you're on here. Sorry.
Okay.
people don't want to use the hand sanitizer that the seller has put outside the door and they do not wear a mask? They say they don't need one because they're not sick.
But do they want to stay well and not be sick?
No, no, and I don't have extra masks to pass out anyway. I just wonder what are people doing? Are you running into that as well?
I have not run into it myself yet. And
I just said I wouldn't show unless they had a mask. And
Yeah.
everybody's been really good about having their own mask because, yeah, you can't get them. I supply gloves, but not the masks.
Where do you get gloves these days? I don't have any.
You
Amazon.
could still you can get them at Walmart. They've got them. I'm not having real issues finding the gloves. It was just, I was looking for the paper mask so I could, contribute, but that's just not happening.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I understand the glove. I'm actually waiting for a box of gloves to show up from Amazon that I ordered over a week ago. They're supposed to show up in the next day or two.
I ordered the Keller Williams ones that have the KW Cares, and I like them.
Oh, the masks. Oh, I haven't seen those yet. Oh, that's cool. So this is someone that you've already been out with or that wants to go see something?
I went out with
Hmm.
on Saturday.
Yeah. So they refuse to wear a mask and use the hand sanitizer. Really?
Mhm.
Oh,
Well,
interesting.
you don't. I mean, mask is not mandatory. It's recommended.
Correct. It is recommended. It's not mandatory, but it might become mandatory. I don't know in this next go around of whether or not we're going to be able to open up on Friday. It's just good practice, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I am seeing more and more people wearing masks out in public,
Yeah, me too.
even just driving in their cars. But
Yeah.
interesting, very interesting. All right, let me see if I can share this screen. You know, I always have challenges with this, so bear with me. Okay. This is just a one-page explanation. Go back here, but it's a good place to start. So you're all familiar, well, why is this not showing up? You're all familiar with the new clear cooperation policy that went into effect May 1st, correct? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Maybe.
Not sure.
Give us a quick review.
Not sure? Okay, I shall. So what clear cooperation means is that if you are a member of an MLS and you're making listings available to all other participants within, excuse me, let me start over. The clear cooperation policy means that if you are publicly marketing your listing, meaning you've got a sign in the yard, you're printing flyers, you're posting it on social media, it must be put into the MLS. Within, let's see, it's within
24 hours.
24 hours of your marketing date that's on your listing. There are FAQs and a video posted on the NAR website, and it's also on the, I don't know if Alamance has it on theirs. We can look in a minute, but both Triad and Triangle both have information posted on their websites as well.
What was it before? I always thought that you better not put your sign out until you had that. I was always thinking in my brain that I had to go live before I stuck the sign out.
Yeah, I think theoretically that is the policy. However, it's not always practical. But I think if you do it as close together as possible, then you'll be all right. It's like if somebody sticks a sign in the yard and then doesn't upload it into MLS for a week, yeah, that's a violation and that's a problem. So what they have done is to comply with that new rule change, they have updated the two listing agreements, the residential and the vacant land. And I had posted both of those on the Facebook page and also sent it out in an email. The essential change is that the new offer exclusive option was added. So that means that if your listing is, and we don't practice office exclusive listings, so it really is a moot point for us at Keller Williams, but say you were with a company that only wanted to sell their own listings within house. That would be considered an office exclusive listing, which would have to have the permission of the seller for you to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
It makes sense what you said, but not to do it. I would think that'd be a terrible disservice to your seller, but.
Well, you know, it depends too on the seller. Now there are situations that, you know, the seller may not want a sign in the yard and maybe doesn't want to be publicly marketed. So that's a different situation. So if the seller says, I don't want my house publicly marketed and I don't want it in the MLS, they can opt for that. But of course they have to sign a form that, you know, documents that preference.
How do they market it if it's not in the MLS and you can't put it out in the public?
Really, the only way you can do it is by word of mouth.
Because that, you couldn't even put it out on Facebook or anything on the
That's
internet.
correct. That's correct.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not going to be widely used in most cases. I think those type of listings are probably going to be something that's in your upper price ranges, where there's not going to be a huge pool of buyers anyway. You know, something that's probably like in your $1 million price range, perhaps. So, but then at the same time, you know, more likely someone in that price point is probably going to come from somewhere else other than within your local area. So if you're not marketing it to the, you know, the wider pool of buyers across the country or maybe even the world, you know, the seller might be losing out on something. But in some cases it happens. So let's just look at the listing agreement line by line here. And again, if I could, let me try this. Try pulling up the listing agreement, the new listing agreement. That's not what I wanted to do. I know, Max, you already used it. A couple of agents had called me over the weekend and they have used it. Did you find any difficulty?
No.
Okay.
I
Of course,
had,
you didn't have a whole lot of experience with the old one, so that makes it easier for you using it brand new.
Yeah.
I had already filled out the old one, and so I had to do it over.
Now, here's the tricky thing that is really annoying as far as I'm concerned. In their publication that came out, there was no mention of a grace period. You know how typically when we have our forms revised every July, they usually give us 60 days before they have to be used. But there was no indication of a grace period this time. So I emailed them first thing this morning, and when I logged on here, I had not gotten a response yet. So stay tuned about that. But in my opinion too, if a form has been revised, it's been revised for a reason. So you're probably better off just getting started using it going forward. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go back and revise anything that's already been put in place prior to May 1st. You don't have to do that. All right, so let me see if I can share this screen. It's going to work this time. Does that make sense? So you don't have to go back to this is not working today for some reason. You don't have to go back and revise anything, any previous listing agreements that you have in place.
Mine was just, I had already filled it out, but it wasn't signed yet. So I figured I
Oh,
had
I
to
see.
do it.
Gotcha. Well, for whatever reason, it's probably user error on my part. It's not allowing me to share the screen. So I'm just going to read to you. And highlight the changes. Okay, so and I'm going to basically go through the residential one. The vacant land one will pretty much follow the same changes. So what the first thing they did on the time for when the listing agreement is going to terminate at the end of the day, they changed it from midnight to 11:59 p.m. So what that means is that when you put in a termination date or an expiration date of your listing, which you are required to do, then the expiration will take effect at 11:59 p.m. on that last day. I don't know why there was confusion between midnight and 11:59 p.m., but apparently there was something that they claimed they had to change. And then this is something important. I think this is in the fixtures and exclusions and paragraph 4 for personal property. That's on page 2. And it's also, you know, kind of transferred over to the offer to purchase when the time comes. They want you to stress the importance to the seller and the listing agent of discussing in detail and describing in writing in both those paragraphs what items are willing to convey as part of any sale and what items the seller would like to exclude, and what items located on the property that the seller may not own. And this is something I see a lot when I review listing contracts, both prior, you know, for provisional brokers, but even in compliance situations. A lot of times those 3 paragraphs or those 3 blanks are left blank completely. And so does that mean that there isn't anything, or does that mean that it wasn't addressed? So what you need to do is, and I've seen, like Marcy has done this a couple of times, if there is nothing, no fixtures that are not conveying or personal property that is conveying, then just put NA or none. Because that way then everybody is clear on whether or not anything's included or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, that's really important both in the listing agreement and, because the listing agreement, that if there's something that's not conveying, you need to disclose that in the MLS. If it's a fixture, like a light switch, a light fixture. You know, sometimes you'll have sellers that have perhaps a chandelier that's a family heirloom or something that they want to take with them. So that would need to be listed as something that's not conveying on the listing agreement and also disclosed in your MLS listing. Because you don't want to go under contract and you're getting to, you know, halfway to closing and all of a sudden the seller's like, do the buyers know that that chandelier is leaving? And then the buyer might say, well, I was planning on that staying. So you can see, has anybody ever had that problem before?
Oh, girl.
So you understand the reason behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you understand the reason behind this.
It'll happen to everybody.
It will at some point in time, yes. So if you cover it in the listing agreement, disclose it in the MLS, it should transfer to the offer to purchase. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So just make sure that if you're the listing agent, that you've got that addressed in your listing agreement. Okay. All right. Paragraph 3, which is the fixtures and exclusions again. And this, let's see, paragraph incorporates new wording and reformatting of fixtures and exclusions, but it will not roll out to July 1st. Why they felt they had to tell us about it now, I don't know. But anyway, so there's going to be a new warning to address the importance of, again, what items will be included or not included in the sale that has to do with smart devices. You know, a lot of people have those Ring doorbells and other types of security equipment and things of that nature. Maybe they have a digital thermostat, like a Nest. That needs to be clearly worded that it's either staying or not staying. Let's see, there's going to be a note added under fuel tanks at the request of the NC Propane Gas Association to make it clear that state law prohibits disconnecting, interrupting, or filling a tank without the supplier's consent. Now that's something we haven't dealt with much before. Has anybody ever come up with an issue involving a propane tank?
Listed on the offer to purchase as rented from so-and-so.
Right, yes, that has to be clearly stated. And that question is also asked on the listing agreement, obviously, so that is gonna have to be addressed there as well.
Or how
Storage
much
scares
gas
the crap
slip.
out of me.
I'm sorry,
They
Chris?
scare the crap out of me.
Propane tanks?
Yeah, any kind of tank.
Any kind of tank, yeah. Well, most, it used to be all propane tanks were above ground. However, with newer construction, they're now underground.
Right.
Why did they decide to do that? I don't know. Maybe propane tanks don't deteriorate and leak like old underground oil tanks have. But so just make sure you have that conversation, ask the question, and find out whether or not there is a propane tank anywhere on the property. More times than not, it's going to be in rural areas where you're on well and septic.
Isn't there something also about if they've paid for the gas that's already in it, or wasn't there some kind of, I
Well,
can't
the
remember.
gas is personal property. However, they put it into fixture now, right?
No, there is a part of the listing agreement
Get your
that has to do with the fuel in the propane tank. No, I'm sorry, it's not on the listing agreement. It's on the offer to purchase. It is considered to convey with the property. Years ago, we had to run around having it measured right before closing and finding out whether or not the buyer wanted to purchase it from the seller.
Right, that must be what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Something
And it wasn't that long ago.
yeah.
Probably only 5 years ago,
Yeah,
right?
I remember doing it.
Yeah. Luckily, that's gone away now. So what this is referring to is this fixtures change that, tanks are considered fixtures, but also it's at the bottom of the first line of items under fixtures. And it says whether attached or buried and including any contents that have not been used, removed, or resold to the fuel provider as of settlement. Note, seller's use, removal, or resale of fuel in any fuel tank is subject to seller's obligations under paragraph 8 to provide working existing utilities through the earlier of closing or possession by buyer. So you can't empty the tank and then you can't light the stove or get hot water. And then a further note says, state law provides that it is unlawful for any person other than the supplier or the owner of a fuel supply tank to disconnect, interrupt, or fill the tank with liquefied petroleum gas without the consent of the supplier. So there obviously was some problem happening with people trying to disconnect it or empty it on their own. So word to the wise for you as listing agents and buyer's agents, the tank has to stay where it's at and nobody should mess with it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's see what else we've got here. And we talked about smart devices, including thermostats. And then they also added a subparagraph to this that says, new wording obligates the seller to unpair any devices that will convey from any personal property devices with which they are paired. Yeah. Delete personal data from any devices that will convey and restore all devices to factory default settings unless otherwise agreed. So that's a new thing. That's definitely more pertinent for the times that we're in now. Paragraph 4, this is kind of redundant from what we already talked about. A new sentence is going to be added, has been added to an existing note to stress the importance of identifying in the contract any personal property that will be included in the sale. All right, paragraph 9 has been reformatted to put greater emphasis on firms' duties. Existing wording has been broken down into separate subsections to assist in reading and comprehension of firms' duties. Firms' ethical duties relating to the disclosure of offers has been inserted in a new note box and moved to the beginning of the paragraph. So let me look at that real quick. You're familiar with the firm's duties section of the listing agreement?
What?
Are you familiar with the firm's duties in the listing agreement? This is on page 4. So they've added a note in, you know how you have those blue boxes that are, squared in blue? So it essentially says, in accordance with the Realtor's Code of Ethics, firms shall, with seller's approval, in response to inquiries from buyers or cooperating real estate firms, disclose the existence of offers on the property. Where seller authorizes disclosure, firm shall also disclose whether offers were obtained by the individual agent who signs this listing agreement, another agent of the firm, or by a cooperating real estate firm. And you all know that you cannot disclose the existence of multiple offers without the seller's permission, correct?
Right.
Just wanted to be sure. All right. So that has to do with realtor ethics. And then they added initial blanks at the end of this paragraph for the seller to initial that they've been made aware of each of these duties listed in the paragraph. Now that's definitely something new we have not had to do in the past. So let me just see where that is. So this would be on the top of page 5. There's the familial status disclosure there. The agent firm shall conduct all brokerage activities in regard to this agreement without respect to the protected classes, race, color, religion, et cetera, et cetera. Further, realtors have an ethical duty to conduct such activities without respect to the sexual orientation or gender identity of any party or prospective party. So right under that bold paragraph, they have added 2 initial spots for the seller to acknowledge. So that we'll have to keep that in mind when we're getting initials. Any questions on that? Are you guys awake out there?
Yeah, no questions.
Okay, just checking. All right, so this has to do with the marketing section in the agreement, paragraph 10. Subparagraph A, this wording has been taken from the old menu of marketing services, since under this newly reformatting and rewording marketing paragraph, all listings must be submitted to the MLS unless the seller and the firm agree that the listing will be an office exclusive. And this is on under the marketing section above where you check the boxes for marketing authorization. And actually inserted above the marketing date paragraph. Firm shall submit pertinent information concerning the property to any listing service of which the firm is a member or in which any of the firm's agents participate in accordance with the rules of any such listing service. Seller authorizes firm to furnish to the listing service notice of all changes of information concerning the property authorized in writing by the seller. Upon execution of a sales contract, to notify the listing service of the pending sale and the expiration date of any due diligence period. And upon closing of the sale, to disseminate sales information including sales price, to the listing service, appraisers, and real estate brokers. So that was never in our listing agreement before, but now you can't get away with not knowing you have to do that. And it's good that the seller knows that you have these duties that you have to perform too. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Mhm.
And then the next bullet point has to do with, because of this near clear cooperation policy, public marketing is prohibited during the delayed marketing period. So for instance, if you sign a listing agreement, say on May 1st, but your delayed marketing period is May 15th, you are prohibited from publicly marketing that property during that 2-week window. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, typically that time is because you want to get your listing agreement signed, but the house isn't quite ready yet. So you shouldn't be publicly marketing it anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
Coming soon advertising will still be permitted in accordance with the MLS rules. Any coming soon advertising that is considered to be public marketing will trigger the requirement that the listing be submitted to other participants for cooperation within 1 business day. However, the listings will still be subject to any coming soon rules, meaning that it can't be shown and you can't give out any pertinent information about the size, the price, etc. And they just kind of move that around a little bit into the same subsection. Now, another change they've made in the marketing section has to do with the permission to use a lockbox. So this has been moved out of the marketing authorization subparagraph and into its own subparagraph. Since in an office exclusive listing, the option may still be checked even though none of the other marketing options in the new paragraph will be applicable. Let's look at that real quick. So now in the marketing authorization section, you have signs, open houses, advertising other than on the internet, coming soon advertising, and internet advertising. And then underneath that, it has its own little subsection that says lockboxes, key boxes, does or does not authorize. Let's see what's next. And then they've made, similar changes to the vacant land listing agreement, and also they have a new revised internet advertising addendum, which I have never used. I don't know if anybody else has, but. And the internet advertising addendum basically is for when the seller opts out of that. Let me just look at one other thing here. So they have added a paragraph on page 6 that says if this is an office exclusive listing. And it basically is letting the seller know that the seller has agreed to withhold consent for the listing to be disseminated to other participants of any listing service of which firm is a member or in which any of firm's agents participate. Seller understands and acknowledges that the rules of any such listing service may require that the listing be filed with the listing service, which we know they will. The listing service may require a firm to provide a certification signed by the seller that the seller does not desire the listing to be disseminated by the listing service. And the seller further understands and acknowledges that listing service rules may require that the listing be submitted to the listing service and disseminated to its participants with 1 business day. So basically is saying, you know, they can have an office exclusive listing. The seller has to understand that if they don't want it in the MLS, then they have to sign a form that indicates that, and then the information will not be publicly disseminated to the multiple listing services. And that's basically it as far as those changes are concerned. Don't be surprised, though, if there are more revisions come July 1. Because they do have a tendency to tweak these forms just about every year. But for those of you that haven't used the old forms, it won't matter because you have nothing to compare it to. You don't have that muscle memory in your brain.
That's right.
It's those of us that have been working with it for all these years and now have to relearn. So if you have more questions or want to watch the video, you can certainly go to ncrealtors.org and watch it there. That's a good resource. All right, and let me just go back to my email real quick and just see if there's.
I have a question, not about this, totally off the wall.
Okay.
I thought bold was from 3 to 5.
That I believe was something that was announced early on, but it's 2 to 4 because it's actually 1 to 3 Central Time.
Right.
But for us, that's 2 to 4.
Okay, because I have in my calendar 3 to 5, and I'm like, I know somebody said 3 to 5, and then
I had it in mind too. Same.
Okay.
So it wasn't you. I mean, I put
Okay.
it down because I'm like, I got to mark my calendar off. But then I looked at the sheet that we got,
Yeah.
Right.
and I'm like, oh, that says 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to just check to see if I have gotten a email response back from our association. Let's see. Oh, yes, I have. Okay, so usually we would have a 60-day grace period, but for the new listing agreements, you should implement them now. Even though our forms policy has a 60-day grace period, the clear cooperation rules are currently in effect. These new listing forms reflect those requirements in effect and will be important for both you and your clients. So that clarifies that, which is why they didn't put any grace period date in their original communication.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody that has a question, or if you hear of anybody questioning that, they do need to be started to be used. The unfortunate part is that DocuSign has not been updated yet. And I have asked our regional tech coordinator about that, but I have not gotten a response to that so far. So hopefully that will be happening pretty quickly. They kind of sprung it on us out of the blue. All right, so just a note about PB class. We are not going to be holding that on Tuesdays during Bold. So you can just join in with us here on Mondays like you did today.
Okay.
I am not sure if we're still doing the how-to classes on Thursday morning. They are on the calendar, so I'm assuming yes. But there was some discussion about maybe maybe discontinuing those during bold as well. We are working on trying to get the videos sort of on a resource page on our YouTube channel, so that agents can access that at any time, whether it's 8 o'clock at night or 12 and midnight or whatever it is, so that you can look at that yourselves and get some help there. Anybody having any issues with how to do certain forms at this point, since we have a variety of both of you on here, brokers and PBs?
None for me.
Okay. How about Sanji or Max?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
I'm going to be with Nick at 2 o'clock today, so I'll be able to get on DocuSign and get all of that.
Oh, good. And while you're on there, Max, with Nick, ask Nick about the new forms,
Okay.
if he knows anything about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, I thought I just saw an email from Mary Carol's. So I copied her on that too. Now, where did it go? Well,
Carla, do you know anything about the, I sent an email to Mary Carol. You know how we have the coupons for the commission credit for between April 15th and May 5th?
right.
Well, I didn't know where, I just sent Mary Carol an email saying I had already submitted my contracts to compliance, and I
Right.
put the coupon in the email to her. I didn't know where I'm supposed to put it.
Yeah, it needs to go to her.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely needs to go to her, and that'll be paid out at closing.
okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure.
Of course.
I don't
Yeah.
want to.
No, or does it go towards the whole thing goes towards your,
What's that?
do you get paid on it, or does it go towards you capping?
It was my understanding that it was supposed to be a rebate,
Okay.
meaning that if, it would, I don't, that perhaps there could be a situation where rather than getting it as a rebate, maybe it could go towards your cap. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a way to,
find
it was kind of, something like a stimulus to put more money in your pockets right now.
Okay.
That was the intent.
Yeah, because they said if you're already capped, they would save it for when you
If you're already capped, yes.
Right.
Obviously, because they don't have any money to work with then,
Right.
in that case. Yeah,
Okay.
so. But Mary Carol would be the point person on that to ask.
Well, I sent it to her, and I just sent 2 of the coupons in the email, so I figured, but I hadn't heard anything back.
Yeah. She's been transmitting the last 2 days, so that could be why.
Okay. What time did you say we're supposed to pick up the pizzas tomorrow then? Was it 11 or 11:30?
11:30.
Okay,
And then the idea is to get back home in time to
Right.
come on to Zoom at 12.
at 12, right.
Did I hear somebody else with a question?
I don't remember. Sorry.
That's okay. Let me just look at one other thing.
Oh, do we know when the office is opening back up? Or are
We
we
don't.
waiting till Friday?
I would expect we'll know something by Friday, depending on what the governor decides.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
To my knowledge, there has not been any official date set. And I don't know what all that is going to look like either. We could have to do something staggered. We just don't know yet, which is frustrating. Now, of course, you all know you can go there if you need to print something or
Oh, yeah.
check your mail and that sort of thing.
There's actually quite a few people still working in the office. when I'm gone.
Surprisingly, yes, I know. And I don't think I quite understand that, but it could have something to do with the way their office is set up at home.
Yeah, if you're sanitizing your own space, I mean, it's not a. You just have to watch the doorknobs when you leave.
Yeah. And it might not be a bad idea to have gloves and a mask
Right.
for coming and going too. I mean, I was there on Thursday last week, and I just went in and I had to talk to a few agents. I just went in my office and closed the door,
Yeah.
kept it closed while I was in there. But I did have my mask and gloves too.
It's hard to lead Jen with a mask on.
Yes, it is. It's hard to do much of anything with a mask on for any length of time, quite honestly.
My glasses get all steamed.
Yeah. And if you're doing any strenuous exercise, it's a little hard to breathe too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I don't have any other subject matter today. I thought maybe our discussion of the listing agreement was going to go longer, but it hasn't. So does anybody, before we break up, does anybody have any other topics they need to talk about?
No, not for
Nothing.
me.
Okay. Well, then I will let you go a couple minutes early today.
Okay.
Awesome sauce.
Darla.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
You're
good
welcome.
day.
Thank you.
Don't forget tomorrow at 11:30.
Yay. Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.